Former President Jimmy Carter has been hospitalized in Atlanta, where he is set to undergo a major operation to relieve pressure on his brain today. The Carter Center says he was admitted overnight.
This comes after the 95-year-old suffered several falls earlier this year that triggered swelling in his brain. Mark Strassman reports from outside of Emory University Hospital, where the procedure will take place.
The goal of today's procedure is to relieve pressure from Mr. Carter's brain. Doctors say the issue is internal bleeding after several recent falls. It's the latest in a series of health scares for America's oldest living president. Just last month, he turned 95. The Carter Center says former President Jimmy Carter will undergo a surgical brain procedure this morning, something he needs because of recent falls. Mr. Carter has fallen 3 times this year. In May, his first fall broke his hip. And last month he fell twice. The first resulted in 14 stitches, the second a fractured pelvis. CBS News medical contributor Dr. David Agus says the type of procedure Mr. Carter will undergo is normally quick. It involves drilling a small hole in the brain and draining fluid that's causing pressure. Mr. Carter's time in the operating room is expected to be about 1 hour.
I, Jimmy Carter, do solemnly swear.
The 39th president has had several major medical problems in recent years. In 2015, he was diagnosed with cancer that spread to his liver and brain. He recovered after treatment with a new immunotherapy drug, and 6 months later announced he was cancer-free.
What should I do personally?
Despite those setbacks, Mr. Carter has continued his normal routine, which includes teaching Sunday school classes in his hometown of Plains, Georgia. Earlier this month, Mr. Carter spoke to a Sunday school class about his recent health concerns and his own mortality.
I didn't ask God to let me live, but I just asked God to give me a proper attitude toward death. And I found that I was absolutely and completely at ease with death.
Mr. Carter also continued his work at Habitat for Humanity. Last year, he spoke to our John Dickerson about the importance of that project.
There's 1,700 volunteers working here. What does that tell you about America?
It tells me that America has a great orientation toward helping people in need.
Rosalind Carter is here with her husband at the hospital. Doctors say he's resting comfortably. The Carters recently became America's longest married presidential couple. 73 years, Vlad and Anne-Marie, longer than George and Barbara Bush.
All right, Mark, thank you very much. For more on this, let us bring in Dr. Janette Nesheiwat. She's a board-certified medical doctor specializing in family and emergency medicine. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll make it clear that you have never treated former President Carter or anything along those lines, but can you give us a sense of, what may have caused the need for this surgery right now?
Sure. So with advanced age, and if maybe you're on blood thinners or if you drink alcohol, this puts you at a higher risk of brain bleed. And in his condition, in his situation, with these multiple falls, he's at a higher risk of striking his head. And you have blood vessels in the brain called bridging veins. And sometimes they tear, and these vessels become more fragile as we get older. They tear, and you can have a bleed. Most likely, probably in his situation, he had what's called a subdural hematoma. And probably what the neurosurgeons are going to do, they're going to do a procedure called a craniotomy, where they just remove a small portion of the skull, go in, take out the hematoma, the collection of blood, irrigate it, clean it out, and then hopefully we'll see some improvement in his condition.
So how risky is this procedure for somebody of President Carter's age?
It's pretty risky. They say the prognosis, the outcome, anywhere from 30 to 70%. But as we get older, it becomes more risky. We're concerned for, things like seizures, even having a stroke after this sort of surgery, and then maybe memory loss, confusion. And so he will probably have to undergo some physical therapy for several months.
But if he's healthy, if he's overall healthy, and everything goes well with this operation, he's going to be in good shape.
Hopefully,
He's
but
still 95.
He's 95.
Right, but I mean healthy for a 95-year-old.
Yeah, but we don't know, does he have any underlying cardiac abnormalities such as atrial fibrillation? Was he on a blood thinner like warfarin or aspirin that maybe made him a little bit more prone to this bleed? But with those recurrent falls, we saw he had a hip fracture. He's gone through a lot with the brain cancer, the liver cancer, the skin cancer, but he's definitely a fighter, and he's pulling through.
So he's being treated at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta.
Yes,
His excellent facility.
Absolutely. He's in great hands over there.
So so again, everything going well, what should we expect for his recovery?
Usually it takes several months. He may undergo physical therapy. He may have some problems with speech, cognition, memory, but hopefully with time we will see him back to his baseline. He may come out and be able to speak normally and recognize who you are, recognize your name, not have problems with weakness. They may even put him on some seizure medicines just for maybe a short period of time after the procedure, just to make sure that he doesn't have any secondary seizures because of this procedure. But everyone is different. The outcomes are different and variable, but definitely it's more complicated with advanced age.
So what would have happened if he didn't have this procedure?
So sometimes the blood, if it accumulates in mass amounts, it can cause damage. It can kill the brain cells. Your heart can stop. You can have nausea, vomiting, headache, confusion, and it can cause death. So it's probably gotten to the point where this blood the blood in his brain is getting to a certain amount where it's causing symptoms, which is now they're probably deciding, let's take action and do something about it. Because for some people, you can, if it's just a tiny bleed, maybe we could just watch it and see how you do. You don't always have to have surgery, but obviously it's becoming symptomatic in his situation where they need to take action.
If it's super tiny, could it heal itself?
Sometimes it can, but it has to be closely monitored, closely watched with either CTs, MRIs, and under close care of a neurosurgeon, a neurologist, to make sure it's not progressing and worsening.
I just looked at that photo there of President Carter and Mrs. Carter, Rosalind. They're working at Habitat for Humanity. Just overall, doctor, how important is it as we age to stay active, to keep doing the things that you love? I mean, 95, married 75 plus years, they're still both going strong. I mean, you know, how important is that?
It's very important, and it definitely can play a role in your prognosis and how you do and during your recovery. But, you know, the day after he fell and broke his hip, he wanted to get back out there to Habitat to Humanity. He loves to volunteer and be active and involved in the community. But I think that's so important to stay active physically and mentally, because that can help keep you going in the long run.
So, Anne-Marie, 50 years from now, me and you, with our canes,
there you go.
Shaking our fists at the camera.
Who will be watching? Who will be watching? I guess it doesn't matter,
That's
right?
right. Get these get these folks off the television screen, but we'll still be here to pry us away, right, Doctor?
Me too.
Dr. Nesheiwat, thank you.
Positive attitude.
Exactly. Thanks, Doctor.
My pleasure. Thank you.